They called him the shepherd of the city. Every Sunday his voice rolled through 12 giant screens and 1,000 hands lifted toward heaven. But if you followed the money behind those hands, you'd find something darker than sin, an empire built on faith, fear, and numbers that never added up. This is the story of Radiant Grace Ministries, and the man who sold salvation by the square foot. Before we open the files they buried under the pulpit, hit subscribe, because this one tests how far belief can bend before it breaks. The church rose from downtown concrete like a crystal fortress, glass, gold, and LED crosses that burned even in daylight. At its center stood Reverend Caleb Ward, 52, smooth-voiced, dressed in designer suits that shimmered under the lights. He called it modern ministry. Weekly services streamed to 500,000 viewers. His Instagram showed baptisms beside private jets and charity drives flanked by celebrities. Behind every sermon was a slogan, "Grace Scales Up." To his followers, Ward was a prophet for the digital age. To his staff, he was a CEO preaching from a boardroom disguised as a sanctuary. And to one man, investigative journalist Daniel Holt, Ward was the headline that might finally make sense of the whispers about donations vanishing offshore. The first tip came from a banker, anonymous, nervous, speaking through a burner phone. "You're chasing the wrong scandals," the voice said. "It's not about faith. It's about offshore foundations. Start with Grace Harvest International." 2 days later that foundation wired $1.6 million to an art gallery in Zurich owned by Ward's spiritual advisor, Evelyn Kane. Daniel started digging. He expected greed. He didn't expect the scale: 5 shell companies, each registered under a different branch of Radiant Grace, each filing missionary outreach expenses that disappeared into the clouds. To see inside, Daniel posed as a filmmaker producing a documentary on urban faith initiatives. Radiant Grace welcomed him. After all, good PR was a kind of prayer. Inside, the church felt more like a tech startup than a temple: LED walls, drones, volunteers in branded polos handing out iPads with digital donation forms. Every hallway smelled faintly of coffee and ambition. Ward's assistant, Tara, guided Daniel through marble corridors and security-coded elevators. "We believe in transparency," she said with a perfect smile, though every door required a badge swipe and every camera tracked movement. On the top floor Daniel saw the Reverend rehearsing a sermon to an empty hall, practicing pauses between applause that hadn't happened yet. Ward noticed him, smiled like he'd been waiting. "You're the documentarian," he said. "Good. Stories are the real gospel these days." The handshake was firm but cold. On his finger glinted a gold ring engraved with a cross shaped like a key. Back at the hotel Daniel compared donation ledgers with property records. Radiant Grace owned 6 Hope houses, charitable shelters, but only 4 existed on paper. The other 2 addresses pointed to luxury condos leased by Grace Holdings LLC. The tenants? Church executives, one of whom drove a Maserati titled under Ministry Transportation. Then Daniel found a hidden folder labeled Sanctuary 7, restricted access on an internal drive leaked by a former accountant. Inside were spreadsheets tagged, blessing transfers. Each listed a donor, an amount, and a coded recipient. He cross-referenced one code, Alpha 3, and uncovered an account in the Cayman Islands held by Caleb Ward himself. He arranged to meet the former accountant, Miriam Dane, mid-40s, exhausted and chain-smoking in a parking garage near the church. Rain echoed off concrete as she slid him a flash drive. "He calls it divine redistribution," she said. "He takes 10% of every special donation. Says it's for the Kingdom Fund. I audited it once. Got transferred the next day." "Transferred?" Daniel asked. "To the Honduras mission." "There's no Honduras mission." She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the ramp. "There's more. Look for the vault under the main stage. They call it the Faith Reserve." Before Daniel could ask, a security truck rolled past. Miriam disappeared into the shadows. Sunday morning he returned, camera disguised as a lapel pin. He stayed after service when the crowd emptied and janitors moved like ghosts between pews. Behind the choir pit he found the maintenance elevator missing from the blueprints. It dropped to a sub-basement lined with glass cases filled with envelopes, jewelry, handwritten checks. No guards, only a motion sensor and a bronze plaque, "Store not treasures on earth," Matthew 6 verse 19. The faith reserve wasn't a metaphor, it was a vault, a bank of unrecorded tithes. He took photos, uploading backups to the cloud, then heard footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Caleb Ward emerged from the shadows, coat collar up, calm as ever. "You're thorough, Mr. Holt," he said. "But curiosity's a dangerous kind of faith." Daniel's pulse jumped. "People gave you this money to save lives, not by penthouses." Ward smiled. "And yet here they are, alive. Fed by faith. Fed by the idea of me." He stepped closer, voice low. "You think sin looks like theft? It doesn't. Sin looks like disappointment. I give them hope, and hope costs money." He paused inches away. "Delete what you found. I'll donate twice your salary to any charity you name. You get to feel righteous and rich. Everyone wins." Daniel said nothing. Ward's smile stayed fixed. "You'll come around. They all do." Then he turned and left, leaving Daniel with the hum of fluorescent confession. That night the Radiant Grace website went dark for 10 minutes. When it returned, donation totals for the quarter had changed, numbers rounded, higher than before. Someone inside had noticed Daniel's access. He called Miriam. No answer. Her number was dead. Then an email appeared, no sender name, just the subject line, "You opened the wrong door." Attached was CCTV footage of Daniel in the vault, time-stamped and watermarked internal security copy. They were watching. He packed his files, booked a flight out. At the airport his phone buzzed with another message, an untraceable link. A live stream opened, Caleb Ward on stage, smiling at his congregation, reading from the book of John. "The truth shall set you free," he said, "but first it will try to destroy you." Behind him, the projection screen showed still images from Daniel's hidden camera feed. The audience applauded, thinking it was part of the sermon. Daniel's throat went dry. Ward wasn't hiding the truth anymore, he was performing it. When faith becomes theater, confession becomes currency. And somewhere beneath Radiant Grace, the vault lights keep humming, waiting for the next believer to pay admission. The rain hadn't stopped since Daniel Holt left Gray Street, and in the puddles outside his hotel he kept seeing the church reflected upside down, the cross floating beneath the water instead of above it. He was halfway to the airport when a blocked number called. A woman's voice, low and hurried, "If you still want the truth, check the ledger room on the 5th floor. The keys in the choir robe I left behind." The line went dead. Daniel turned the cab around. Radiant Grace looked different at night. Without stage lights it was all shadow and hum, just a skyscraper wrapped in stained glass. Security moved like clock hands, slow and predictable. He slipped through a side door, climbed the emergency stairs, and found the robe closet. Inside one of the deep pockets was a small flash drive and a brass key tagged Vault 5. On his laptop the drive opened to encrypted spreadsheets and one video. He pressed play. The screen filled with Reverend Ward, speaking directly into a camera, not to his flock but to his financiers. "Gentlemen," Ward said, voice smooth, "Grace Harvest's quarterly yield is 23% above projection. Our faith products perform best during crises. Remember, fear raises giving." Behind him on the wall was a map marked with red pins across half the country. Each pin, Daniel realized, was a satellite church, a franchise. Ward wasn't preaching salvation, he was franchising belief. Daniel called the only person he trusted, Lena Morales, an editor at the Sentinel. "I've got proof of tax evasion, money laundering, everything," he said. If I disappear, drop it all. She told him to come to the newsroom at dawn. He never made it that far. At 3 a.m. two black SUVs pulled in behind him on the expressway. Headlights flared, boxing him in. He veered into an underpass and killed his engine. Footsteps approached. Then a voice, Ward's, echoed in the dark, "Daniel, faith isn't the enemy. Exposure is." But when the figures reached the car, they found it empty. Daniel had slipped out through a service tunnel, leaving the laptop recording. The next morning that footage hit the front page of the Sentinel site. By noon, federal auditors descended on Radiant Grace. Congregants arrived to locked doors and blank screens. Inside, investigators cataloged cash, gold, and digital wallets hidden behind hymn book shelves. The so-called Faith Reserve held nearly $80 million. Ward went on live television that night, framed by his lawyers and the same polished cross that had crowned his stage. "I am a steward of generosity," he declared. "I've taken nothing that wasn't freely given." But his voice trembled for the first time. When reporters asked about the Cayman accounts, he smiled thinly. "You can't launder belief," he said, and walked away. 2 days later his chief accountant, Miriam Dane, reappeared under federal protection. She confirmed every transfer, every coded ledger. He called it sowing seeds, she told agents. But the harvest was always his. Her testimony turned the investigation from rumor to indictment. Daniel watched from a distance as the empire cracked. Donors withdrew. The church's live stream vanished. In its place appeared a single message on the official page, "We will rebuild when the storm passes." But the storm kept circling. A week after Ward's televised defense, an alarm tripped at his penthouse suite. When police entered, they found the Reverend sitting by the window, alive but silent, staring at the skyline where his church once glowed. Beside him on the table lay a single envelope addressed to the Sentinel. Inside was a handwritten note. "Truth is a tithe too. We all pay it eventually." The case became national spectacle. The government froze assets, seized properties, and auctioned off the vault contents. The faithful argued online, some calling it persecution, others betrayal. And somewhere between outrage and relief, Radiant Grace became another ghost corporation dissolved by disbelief. Daniel refused interviews. He turned the story into a documentary, Faith in Numbers, but left out one file, the rest of Ward's video. In the unreleased section, Ward looked straight into the lens and said, "If anyone's watching, you'll build your own church after this. The only real sin is thinking you're immune." Daniel kept that clip on a separate drive, sealed in a safe. Months later, while editing the final cut, he noticed something strange in the background of Ward's original speech, a second reflection in the glass wall behind him, someone else recording with a handheld camera, face obscured by light. Daniel froze the frame. Whoever it was, they were filming Ward as Ward filmed himself. Another layer. Another witness. The investigation hadn't uncovered who that person was, and maybe that was the point. In Ward's world, everyone was both believer and participant. The documentary aired worldwide. Viewers called it haunting, others inspirational. Donations flooded legitimate charities. Yet every so often Daniel received anonymous emails quoting scripture and numbers that added up to bank coordinates already seized by the government. Someone was still moving pieces of the old fortune, quietly, through new shells. One rainy evening he walked past the shuttered Radiant Grace complex. The lights were gone, but a faint hum still pulsed from beneath the ground, the vault generators running on reserve power. He thought about shutting them down, then realized maybe silence was the only sermon left. He looked up at the soaked billboard still clinging to the facade. The slogan had faded, letters dripping into nonsense, "Grace scales up." Beneath it, graffiti in bright red paint read, "So does greed." Daniel turned off his recorder and whispered the line that would close the documentary. Faith built the tower, greed cracked its glass, and truth finally let the rain in. Maybe sin was never the fall, it was pretending we couldn't see it coming. He walked away as thunder rolled over the city, and the reflection of the cross in the puddle shivered once, then disappeared. Be honest, if you found out your spiritual leader was living off your donations, would you walk away, or wait for proof?